Hi again. In John Wesley Brady's This Freedom Whence, England Before and After Wesley, he has been discussing in this chapter the triumphs of John Howard and how prison reform began to be seriously taken by the British government in respect to the parallel victories in the area of economics, that is the suppression of slavery finally. This is before that, though. This is actually in the 1870s and 80s all this is happening. He dies, that is John Howard dies in 1790. But his labors inspired the next generation of prison reformers. Brady says Howard's labors were the immediate inspiration of Jeremy Bentham's panopticon scheme, and if that mechanical contrivance proved futilitarian rather than utilitarian, it was for no lack of ardor on Bentham's part. One of his many panopticon tracts opens thus, quote, "Morals reformed, health preserved, industry invigorated, instruction diffused, public burdens lightened, economy seated as it were upon a rock, the Gordian knot of the poor laws not cut but untied, all by a simple idea of architecture." End of quote. Bentham was over-optimistic about his circular structures wherein warders, seated in the administrative center, could see all without being seen. Nevertheless, so sincere was the humanitarian desire for prison reform that Bentham's scheme won the support of such influential characters as Wilberforce and William Allen, the Quaker proprietor of the Philanthropist. Finally, too, so great became the political prestige of his utilitarian school that under the pressure of James Mill and Sir Samuel Romilly, Bentham, in 1813, became the recipient from Parliament, on its abandonment of his panopticon scheme, of the seemingly extravagant sum of £23,000 as indemnity for losses incurred. Despite all his theoretic talk of the summum bonum and of the greatest happiness to the greatest number, the utilitarian Bentham was much more money-minded than the evangelical Howard. The real successor to Howard was, of course, Mrs. Elizabeth Fry. Though a daughter of John Gurney, Quaker banker at Norwich, as a girl she loved gaiety and eschewed all religious enthusiasm. But under the influence of William Savory, an American Quaker preacher, she began to thirst for spiritual life. On becoming a Quaker minister at 29, she experienced such, quote, incomings of love, joy, and peace, unquote, that all doubts fled her soul. Already the mother of several children, and finally to be mother of 11, she nevertheless found time for works of mercy on every hand. But not until 1813, when 33, did she launch forth upon the labors that have immortalized her name. If the French Terror and the ensuing Napoleonic Wars retarded all social reform in Britain, prison reform is specially retarded. When a nation is fighting for its being, its well-being is forgotten. All prisoners who can serve the state are commonly released and put to national tasks. Wartime prison inmates, accordingly, are reckoned incorrigible enemies of society. Such was the case when Elizabeth Fry, in 1813, was introduced to Newgate, London, the most notorious prison in the realm. Indeed, to read certain of her records, one might imagine that during the long succession of war years, the effects of Howard's life work had been almost obliterated. She concentrated upon the care of women prisoners, many of whom were desperate and depraved, and the results of her courage, sympathy, faith, and far-sighted plans afford one of the most beautiful manifestations of Christian grace. "I have seen the greatest wonder in England," observed an American visitor. "I have seen Elizabeth Fry in Newgate, and I have witnessed there the miraculous effects of true Christianity upon the most depraved of human beings." End of quote. As Mrs. Fry read the Bible and prayed with the women at Newgate, the most impervious criminals melted into reverence. But not only did she teach these abandoned women that they had souls capable of aspiration and worship, she opened for them successful prison schools. She had matrons appointed instead of male superintendents. By her example and precept, she inspired the Association for the Improvement of female prisoners in Newgate. She created the Ladies' Association for visiting jails. She interested different Christian statesmen, including Wilberforce, in this problem. And she sowed the seeds of an order of nursing sisters, which Florence Nightingale later carried to such rich fruition. The revival created a noble succession of women saints, and Elizabeth Fry was one of the noblest in that apostolic line. Next, the reform of the penal code will put a link into one of the other great Christian women saints, and that is Susanna Annesley. Victor Shepard's discussion, one of Vivian's videos, about the influence of the mother of John and Charles Wesley.